Murrayshire, a town filled with zero promise with parts of quietness sprinkled around. We are here, on the edge of it all, where we are here for a reason, and one reason only, to visit our young acquaintance and friend of the old town itself, but who knows what lies in the vast comfy shelter of Murrayshire.
Don't let it get away! Oh, jeez! Neptune, I command you to kill SpongeBob! Kill SpongeBob!
Hello all you beautiful people, and welcome back to the Gamessnia show, where I always look at games from the past, the present, or maybe even sometimes the future and decide what their judgment is going to be. And you know what, may I ask, how are you doing today? I hope you're all doing great. I mean, I'm doing great also. I'm not doing the best, but it's relatively okay for what it is right now. Because, you know, I've always managed to keep a level head and managed to be cool in every scenario. And I mainly think that's because of how I grew up. You know, discovering new things, you know, having the time of my life at play school, but also mainly to do with cartoons such as Jimmy Neutron, Fairy Odd Parents, Good Adventure Billy and Mandy, Ed, Ed and Eddie, and of course, SpongeBob. Now let's roll back towards that subject of SpongeBob. I have known SpongeBob for so long, like I think about before I was about 8 or so, I started watching SpongeBob. I really loved him. I mean, every single kid loves SpongeBob. Yeah, hell, I still love the character now. I mean, I love all the old stuff and all. The new stuff is straight up despicable in my view, but I still love the little sponge himself, and I love his colourful cast of characters. And kids these days still watch SpongeBob, which good on them. It's a good thing to grow up on. Although the old stuff is the better stuff to grow up on because it's a more relatable and much better character in that regard. But regardless, SpongeBob has been around for a long time. And so, realistically, success of SpongeBob would be capitalised on with movies. And of course, there has been some. More specifically, there have been 3 movies featuring our little yellow friend. The SpongeBob movie, which arrived in theatres in 2004, then a second movie 11 years later entitled Sponge Out of the Water, which was a surprise to a lot of people that it came out and was mixed among audiences, and lastly, a film that came out not that too long ago, exclusively to Netflix, Sponge on the Run, which is,
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that?
But you know, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie was a pretty big deal across the entire world, going across all cinemas and being loved by so many SpongeBob and non-SpongeBob fans. So naturally, a movie that successful is obviously going to attract a lot of attention and will probably boot itself across more types of media, which eventually would then lead to it then being boot across the biggest form of media of all, video games. Therefore, we get SpongeBob SquarePants, the movie game. Now, here's where I'm conflicted on this. About movie tie-in games, well, let me tell you about it. So, movie licensed games, they suck. They have an infamous reputation of always making us go from this to this. There's just been too many movie licensed games out there that have just been disasters, and that just leaves everyone with the expectation of disappointment every time we hear the words movie tie-in game, because they just never work. I do know there have been times where this wasn't the case, like Peter Jackson's King Kong, Star Wars 3 Revenge of the Sith, and most notably Spider-Man 2. They do exist, there's just very little of them out there because the games are either rushed out the door so the movie and the game can come out near the same time, or people want to make money by giving a lazy effort on a game that will try to capitalize on a movie's success. SpongeBob, however, has been a different story, as the little yellow piece of kitchenware himself has had endless positive reception when it comes to his games. I even remember my very first game I ever played as a kid, which was a SpongeBob learning game on the Leapster of all things, which was the very first console I ever owned. Speaking of that, who honestly remembers this thing? I remember owning this thing when I was a kid and it generally being my first exposure to video games, which is something really weird you have to think about, but something that's also very weird about it, that SpongeBob was the very first game I played on the Leapster, and the Leapster was my first experience with video games, so technically, SpongeBob was the reason I got into video games in the first place. That's something. But considering how SpongeBob was the very first experience I had playing video games, I felt like it was only natural to cover it. And considering how I was watching the SpongeBob movie 3 weeks ago, and thoroughly enjoyed it, mind you, I felt like, yeah, I want to talk about SpongeBob the movie game. I've not got that much high hopes for this, because it is a movie tie-in game, and most movie tie-in games suck the big one. But, you know, considering how it's SpongeBob, and I do like a couple SpongeBob games out there, I'm gonna give it a fair shot and see if the movie tie-in game curse can be broken here. So let's just jump right into this and let's see what our little square friend has in store for us. So let's get the silly production logos of whoever has been involved with this game. Yeah, I don't care, and neither do you. Let's just start this and get whatever we need to comprehend out of the way so we can review this bad boy.
Welcome to our little tale of woe, triumph against impossible odds, terror, and managerly responsibility. Our story begins in the calm waters above the town of Bikini Bottom. As we descend beneath the waves, we find another day. Wait a minute! Hold your seahorses!
I can't believe this is happening here!
It's horrible!
Whew. Thank Neptune, my manager's here!
Talk to me, Krabs.
It started out as a simple order. A Krabby Patty with cheese.
So what went wrong?
When the customer took a bite, no cheese! Ah, this has never happened before!
Get a hold of yourself, Eugene. I'm going in.
So yeah, if you don't know already, the opening to the movie in the first place is silly and kind of ridiculous, and the game does stay true to that, as you can clearly see. So let's make our way to the Krusty Krab so we can deliver cheese to the customer. But you know what, it's actually a nice little wander for Bikini Bottom, collecting weights to level up and just getting through the basics of it all. So I'll just make my way up this truck here and also deal with a camera that quite frankly is quite shitty and cannot be changed in the menus whatsoever. I'm dead fucking serious, this thing cannot be changed in the options or on the main menu. This is fucking ridiculous. But as I was saying, let's continue onwards to the sandy hill where we encounter... Hey! Is that the pink parlor himself?
No, this is Patrick.
How's it going, but how are you doing today? Oh, slaughtering jellyfish. That's refreshing. After some tongue sliding, karate gliding, some perfect timing and paceful striding, we arrive to the Krusty Krab where Mr. Krabs is waiting for us. Which makes me wonder why we had to take that unnecessary detour in the first place. Like, why couldn't we have fallen cheapskate over there instead? This is no time to waste here. We have a man practically dying in there, and I need to get in there ASAP so I can serve him 105 milligrams worth of cholesterol on a plate, damn it! But it all turns out it was all a dream all along, like most things these days. But now we're back to reality as SpongeBob, that looks really weird, those cutscenes by the way. But as we all know, SpongeBob fails to get the manager position for the newly opened Krusty Krab 2 and is actually appointed to Squidward instead and falls into depression. And yeah, not making that up, that literally happens in the movie if you've watched it, and it is the title of our next level. So what else to cure our depression rather than the best substance known to man?
Ice cream!
Let's now head to Goofy Goobers, where we switch to our beloved sea star, Patrick Star. And Patrick does seem a bit slower in terms of movement, I do get that, but in exchange we get much better and greater quotes from the man himself.
Wheels on the paddy wagon go round and round. I'm challenged all the time. But Mindy, I picked a flower for you. Oh, I think I lost it. My flop is the mightiest flop of all! I understand. Try our best to best our best time and be the best test. You're giving me a ring? But once I didn't take out the garbage for a month and it had flies. Is that what you mean?
Wee.
Hey! It's you two again. I missed you guys.
Well, SpongeBob just died. We move on where we first meet Mindy and we are introduced to our first power-up of the entire game.
Time to spin?
Ah yes, now we can move much faster instead of waddling like we did before, and I don't think it could get any better than this.
Ice cream!
I've never seen a more prettier room in my life. I'll point this out before I forget later on, but this level is quite frankly one of the most visually beautiful and most artistic level I've ever played in a video game. I expect it from Steven Hilbert's greatest creation because, quite frankly, SpongeBob has that type of art style that I really fucking love. So after making our way through the sweet and chocolatey paradise known as Goofy Goober Land, we find a locker and, oh, hey SpongeBob, and a Goofy Goober token at the end of it. And further we quest on this epic journey of ours, but this time on the road where we drive the paddy wagon so we can begin our journey to Shell City in the first of the few driving sections in the game, which by the way has one of the catchiest and most upbeat songs you'll ever hear in your entire life. It's an extremely catchy and upbeat song, and you'll need this to listen to make sure you get through this road of death. It just seems like everything wants to stop you and possibly hurt you in every shape or form. Like, Jesus, can I not drive out of a single town in peace without a wrecking ball coming from the right edge of the screen and slamming into me? But don't worry, with luck, I got out of there. But yeah, if you haven't guessed it already, or if you have, but you just want me to hold your hand like your own mother did whenever she took you to the shops when you were a little kid, you alternate between playing as both SpongeBob and Patrick, who both offer different but very also similar playstyles, with the difference being stuff the other characters are incapable of performing, such as Patrick being able to swim with his tongue, or SpongeBob being able to glide in the air with his jumps. And the differences grow the more you advance in the game as you unlock new abilities that are all locked by a certain amount of Goofy Goober tokens, which are little awards to progress you through the story, and you get them through doing certain challenges through each level, and you complete them and then you get a token at the end of it all. These challenges vary and can be an area that's locked because you don't have the ability to help you through it yet, or it could be a tricky challenge that involves your skill in either combat or maneuverability, which I'll add are the more difficult ones which test more than your skill, believe me. There are, however, a few challenges, just a few, that will drive you up the fucking rear end of a wall because of how difficult and frustrating they can be. The big ones are mainly present in the driving stages and the awesome but not yet talked about slide sections in the game, which I will talk about right now in fact. Unlike the driving stages, where you have to drive and navigate yourself through a town, here you instead have to navigate yourself down a big slope, avoiding obstacles and jumping onto platforms to get to the finish line, of course, with, yet again, a really catchy theme looming in the background. The The slide controls feel a bit flimsy at some points, with the jumping not being that precise, but honestly, I'll be honest, it's not too much to worry about, and it can be very approachable a lot of the time. But the driving sections are the real bastard, because the controlling and handling is just not the best, and it feels very slippy a lot of the time. And then the main challenges, it's okay, but once you start doing time challenges, it really becomes a pain and annoyance, but it can be done. But they are nothing compared to the true torture of pain and suffering that are the ring challenges. You know, I've not been doing this YouTube shtick for a long time, so you may not know this about me, but like many people, I fucking hate rings. Who in their right mind wants to go through this? The controls here are bad enough with you slipping and sliding all over the place, so how do you think it feels when you have to go through every single ring with little time? And yes, they give you the minimal amount of time to go through each ring, and trust me, there's very little room to fuck up here. Oh, and you think as long as you touch the rings, you'd go through them, but no, you have to, and I repeat this, you have to go through the center of the ring or it won't count. It still gives you the bare minimum of time to get through each of the hoops of despair themselves, and you know what? I wouldn't overly complain about this if you could skip this, but no, you need to do at least 2 of these ring challenges to get through the story, and because of how ridiculously hard it can be, it's just unfair, ridiculous, stupid, padded bullshit. I don't like them. Anyway, where was I? Ah yes, upgrades. You may have noticed that you collect weird weight looking things while progressing through the levels. Well, if you collect a certain amount, you will be awarded with a power point. These help you upgrade certain abilities SpongeBob and Patrick have, and thankfully enough, the power points you obtain are shared between the 2 characters. And you can also upgrade the health of both characters up to having 6 yummy Krabby Patties. But to be fair, you don't need to worry about collecting as much weight as possible, as you pretty much get all the upgrades you need by the 3rd last level, and all that matters is what order you get them in, due to some being more mandatory than others. The only 3 you really badly need to upgrade are your health, your basic attack, and the last ability for SpongeBob and Patrick. So I guess it's really 4 upgrades you need to get. The rest of them aren't unnecessary to get, they still help you when dealing with the waves of enemies, and the sheer amount of difficulty that you'll find later on in the game. It's just that if you don't get the mandatory ones first, you'll struggle big time near the end of the game. And you know what, that brings up a good point. The enemies. I gotta give a kids game and a movie tie-in game its credit where credit is due. The variety of enemies in this game is much more than I expected. There's around 10 different variety of enemies, all of which have a different move style and have all different ways of being taken out. And near the end of the game, you get scenarios where you're put against more than 3 of these enemies all at once, and it becomes a really difficult scenario, especially on the final platforming level, which by the way has a huge difficulty spike to get through. Something I don't really expect from a SpongeBob game, but is a sure as well welcome treat to have. So anyway, we become men, we ride and fight our way through the trench only to encounter Dennis, but it's okay because we actually beat him in the end, only then to be captured by the Cyclops. Still, don't understand how he's that big underwater, but kind of something I never actually thought about until this review, but still, they make it to Shell City unintentionally, and then we bitch and cry and die, only to be brought back to life and escape and make our way to Bikini Bottom, but then we encounter David Hasselhoff. Oh my god. What did they do to my boy? That looks horrible. Okay, so there was a point that I was going to make in this video, but I decided on the idea of completely dropping it because I feel like it didn't really matter that much. But after seeing that atrocity just now, I have to talk about it. So in this game, there's 2 types of cutscenes: in-game motion cutscenes and still cutscenes. And these still cutscenes, they are okay sometimes, but other times when they're bad, they are really bad. There have been several times where I've noticed the lazy as fuck Photoshop of characters into backgrounds that just doesn't look right most of the time. I was going to talk about it at the start of the game, but I honestly thought it was a one-off and not that noticeable. But the more of these cutscenes I saw, the more mistakes I noticed. The in-game motion cutscenes are better than this and are good enough, but there was one that I thought was quite shit, and that was before my first boss battle. The acting just fell off for me, and the joke they did here was meh and kind of fell flat. but I fully believe that's because you have it to compare it to in the movie, and that's why it kind of falls flat.
You know, SpongeBob, there's a lesson to be learned from all of this.
What's that, Patrick?
A bubble blowing double baby doesn't belong out here in man's country.
Yeah. Wait, we blew that bubble. Doesn't that make us a bubble blowing double baby?
Hey, look, free ice cream!
Oh boy.
How you doing? Wait a minute. Wait a minute! SpongeBob!
Yeah?
Make mine a chocolate!
Got you covered. Patrick, we've got to start acting like men.
SpongeBob.
I'll be right back.
SpongeBob, wait! Make mine chocolate.
So soon after, we get a ride from someone, and we make our way down to sea level, and we obtain the power of... But oh yes, I can taste it, we're nearly there. We then fight our way through the newly constructed Planktopolis, but before we advance to the Krusty Krab 2 and stop Plankton, his mind statues must be crushed to stop Bikini Bottom from being controlled any further. So after taking out 2 statues, we find ourselves in a pit of lava where the final statue must be destroyed.
Plankton, there's nowhere left to run.
You're too late, SpongeBob. King Neptune is already at the Krusty Krab too. He's all set to fry crabs, and there's nothing you can do about it.
We'll just see about that.
I'd love to stay and chat, but I've got a show to catch. Plan C, I love you.
You won't get away with this, Plankton!
Once we tick off our last side quest in this journey, we continue back onto the main road where Mindy repairs the paddy wagon for us. Somehow. And so after another death-defying, dangerous, slippy sliding way back home, we arrive at the Krusty Krab 2 just in the nick of time.
Alright, crabs. Time for you to die.
Not so fast, Plankton. I brought back King Neptune's crown, and I'm here to save Mr. Krabs.
Nice work, SpongeBob. You made it all the way to Shell City and back. That's a heroic feat. Too bad it won't help. All hail, Plankton.
Hey, King Neptune already has a crown.
That's no crown, Patrick. It's one of Plankton's bucket hats. Plankton is controlling King Neptune.
Neptune, I command you to kill SpongeBob. Kill SpongeBob.
And yes, you heard that right, ladies and gentlemen. Kill SpongeBob. This game gives no shits. However, there's one last job to accomplish, and that's beat King Neptune, who is being controlled by Plankton due to one of his bucket helmets. And this needs to be said, this boss fight is fucking awesome. This is easily the best boss in the entire game, and might be one of the best final bosses in a game, period. And fast forward to 2021, and here's me saying, this shit is fucking hard, and that this is the best part of the game. The setting, the attacks, and just how difficult this whole boss fight is, plus the kick-ass music, and I know there is a way to cheat this boss, but honestly, I respect this fight way too fucking much to cheat my way out of it, so I'm not doing that. So after so much failures and deaths and constant tellings from Patrick, dodge, SpongeBob, dodge! Tables have truly been flipped and turned to 11 as Neptune spices things up and the battleground and ultimately the boss battle.
I'm a goofy goober! You're a goofy goober!
And just like that, this boss battle went from being a good boss fight to then arising to then becoming legendary tier of a boss fight. I think this whole boss fight can be looked at something that is shocking to see appear in a game like this, a SpongeBob game of all things, and the music is just too fucking awesome that it feels like it almost doesn't belong here. All the boss fights in this game are good and relatively mediocre at some points, but this one is just too good enough to even be true and to be even in this game. But thankfully it exists and is the final boss fight and is the best part of the fucking game. So finally, after one last blow, we knock off the bucket helmet and save the day, and Plankton is arrested. However, the question still stands: why does no one talk about the SpongeBob movie game? It does have its share of problems, I will admit, like lame cutscenes, terrible driving controls, unfair ring challenges, but it still plays great and has a memorable soundtrack, is no pushover when it doesn't want to be, very taxing and difficult, and shockingly is a good movie tie-in game. So why are there not many discussions about this one on the internet? I think I have a theory. The gameplay and overall style of this game falls very similar to that of Battle for Bikini Bottom, which is the best supposed SpongeBob game, which does seem a bit lazy that they copied all that and repasted it here, even though it still looks great. I also feel it's because Battle for Bikini Bottom was a whole brand new story worked from the ground up, with no tie-ins whatsoever, and this is a movie-based game, and all it had to really do was design really good levels, which it did, and they didn't really need to worry about anything story-related, as the story was already there from the movie. And I can see that as a reason why people don't talk about this game as much. But seriously, I feel it needs to be mentioned by people, as it's still a solid movie tie-in game, along with a really good SpongeBob game overall. Not the best I've ever played, but still a welcome one at that, and does deserve to be talked about for what it is, and that is a good movie tie-in game. But yeah, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game, my opinion on it is, it's good. Honestly, for a movie tie-in game, it's really good, and that's saying a lot. And I know it copies a lot from Battle for Bikini Bottom, and doesn't feel that original, and does kind of feel a bit lazy just to cash in on the movie. It's still a good game, and I would still replay it today, and I don't get why people don't talk about this. I mean, yeah, I did see the reasons why it's not talked about as much, but still, you still should play it, and people should still talk about it. Because the soundtrack is great, the gameplay is pretty solid, the voice acting is pretty fucking good when it can be, of course. Yes, the cutscenes are a bit iffy, but still, it still doesn't take away from the fact that this is a really well constructed, great movie tie-in game. I mean, it's a movie tie-in game, guys. You don't see good ones these days. Come on. And that is why SpongeBob SquarePants movie game is seriously worth your time and deserves the recognition it deserves. It's a great follow-up for the movie that it's based on, and it's just a good game overall, and that's why you should play it. But you don't need to. I'm not forcing you to. I would just suggest that you do play it, and then you will talk about it to your friends quite a bit. But anyway, guys, this has just been so fucking good just to be back on this game. Like, I've missed my time playing childhood games like this. I've been getting a lot of games that I've been trying to get and see if I can review them down the line. And there's a good amount of games I've gotten from my whole Gamessnia show that I'm going to review somewhere down the line, but I've played them, but I'm not going to review them for a long time because I want to find the right opportunity to do so. And I'm just going to quickly keep on finding games for this every single 2 weeks or so. But anyway, guys, I have enjoyed my time, and I hope you all have enjoyed your time. So I'll probably all see you on the next broadcast of the Gamessnia show. But until then, guys, as always, Gamessnia signing off.